Well, fall is fast approaching, and I finally have gotten all of the annual veggie seedlings in the ground. This is a process that starts, it started all the way back late December and planting onions from seed in trays early, and then slowly, you plant some things in January, like artichokes, for example. I plant from seeds in January, and then there's just a few things in the January timeframe that I might plant, and then you get into February and March, and you're into full-on seed planting, putting seeds in trays and all of that. And if you go back and look at my videos from then, you'll see all that work that was being done, and then it just keeps going. It never ends, right? So as you go through, then you get into the season and things start coming out here in the garden. But you get into April, May, June, I'm seeding the fall veggies, and I'm caring for those in the nursery until it's time to get them out. And I'm arguably late on getting them out. I started planting out the fall veggies from the seed trays at the last part of August and into the beginning of September, and it's taken me all of September pretty much to get those in the ground. But now that we're heading into the last week of September, I've gotten all of them in the ground, and this is the part where there's actually a break from seed starting. Now, I have to say that seed starting and raising seedlings is my favorite part of gardening. But we are getting to a break in it. I could plant some like perennial things and maybe some hardy annuals from seed right now and kind of nurse them along to overwinter them and all that. But I'm going to go ahead and take a break from the seedlings because I do have other garden projects that need to get taken care of. And as we're at the end of September and getting into October, it's time for bulbs. So I'm not doing seeds and trays. I'm going to be doing garlic and tulips and daffodils and crocuses and those sorts of things, all to ensure and prepare for a great show next spring. I'm being pretty aggressive with my planting holes, putting them like a couple inches away from a tomato plant or a pepper plant or an eggplant. That's because all that stuff is going to get ripped out of here in a month or so. So I'm expecting that those will rip out, and then I'll have left the winter plants in here. So what I'm doing here is I've got my all-purpose fertilizer here, and I'm just putting a little bit, like half a tablespoon or so in each of my planting, or around each of my planting holes. In my last video on compost, I talked a little bit about not trying to not just fertilize like right in the hole, but yeah, I'm kind of still doing it. All right, got my fertilizer down. I'm ready to, and this dirt looks pretty dry, so maybe on the next bed in this section, what I'll do is I'll water first. I'll give it like 2 waterings. I'll water first, I'll drill my holes, I'll put the plants in, and then I'll water a second time. But this one didn't get the first watering. That's okay. I'll just water it good as I put the plants in. Well, sometimes it takes me a while to catch on to things. And one of those things is, what really happens with the weather change as we get into fall, and how does that really affect growing in this garden here? And one of the things that I've always said is it can actually stay rather warm into what you consider the fall in the Portland metro area. We're now hitting into the the last week of September, and it's still going to be in the 80 degrees this weekend. And so, that is what's in my head when I think about, well, I could maybe grow crops longer than people think I can in this garden because the heat lasts. But behind me, what you can see back here is the part that I haven't been paying attention to or thinking about, which is that while the heat may be there, the light is changing. I mean, the fact that the sun's position relative to the earth and the trees and the shade and all that, I'm now sitting at just after about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's actually quite shady back here in the North Kitchen garden. So as I head into the late part of September, the sun's position in the sky relative to the large trees that we have in the neighborhood here is not producing the same amount of full sun on my plants for the same amount of hours that it was during the main part of the summer, where the sun was was positioned differently, right? And so bottom line to all of that, talking about the sun's positioning, is light. I'm I just am not getting as much light out here as I would, or as I did in the main part of summer. And so even though it's warmer, we have less light, and that's going to affect growth. That's going to affect the rate of growth. And it tells me that some of my ideas about what could last out here or what could grow out here in the fall are probably not quite right. That things are not going to grow very fast out here. And I think about my planting my fall veggies. I started seeds kind of in June and got the starts going, and I think I need to start them even sooner. I think I need to start fall veggie seeds kind of at the very beginning of June, not late June, in the beginning of June. And ideally, I probably need to get them in the ground by August in order for them to really get enough light to have the speed of growth that they need to have a good size. If I'm talking about like a cabbage or a broccoli or a cauliflower or even Brussels sprouts or anything like that, to have a good size by now and then into October, November, where we don't have as much light, we need to take advantage of when there is light to really grow them big before we get to those months. And the problem with that is the heat. And so what I'm going to have to look at for next summer is how do I get the full sun of the summer and the warmth and the fast growing period without the massive heat that would make a lot of those things just bolt. So something for me to continue to work on. Well, these guys turned out to be a favorite tomato for me of the season. I hadn't grown them before. I've got to trace them back to the seeds that I bought to remind myself exactly of what they were. I remember buying something that was supposed to be kind of more of a striped tomato. I thought these were going to have more of like a Roma flavor to them, but they don't. They're much more like a cherry tomato. They're sweet but still tart and balanced and acidic, and I love it. Oh, that's a big blackberry. Here's the rest of the harvest for this week. Eggplants, kale and broccoli, of course. We've got beans, peppers, both hot peppers and some sweet peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes, winter squash has started, and our one and only melon. Well, I've cleaned out the melon vines. I got 2 melons out of there. Not a very big haul this year. And you know, it's too late in the season for anything else to grow, so I just cleaned those out. I think it's actually too late in the season for the rest of these eggplants to actually produce fruit either. There's some small fruit on a couple of them, but I'll probably clean these eggplants out as well. And so, you know, as an update on kind of my eggplants this year, I had originally planned to not grow them in here, to just grow them out there. Then at the last minute, because we were having a late rainy, colder spring, I thought, well, maybe I'll just go ahead and grow in here. So I did that, and it ended up growing really big plants, but there wasn't very much eggplant production inside here. And I think it's because during the season where eggplant production could happen, where it was nice and warm and hot outside, it was just way too hot in here no matter what I could do, you know, watering and pulling the shades and running the fans and that sort of thing. And now that it is not as hot in here, there's not enough light and heat left in the season, even in the greenhouse, to grow better fruits. So it's it just is not working out in here this year. Meanwhile, out in the garden beds, my eggplants have produced. So I've gotten, you know, maybe 2 or 3 eggplants, well, maybe a little bit more, maybe 6 to 8 eggplants out of the greenhouse, and I've gotten, you know, a couple dozen at least, maybe 3 times that amount, more than that actually, say over 30 eggplants if I count all the little small ones. I'm not really counting those in my head, but if I count all the little small ones, over 30 eggplants just out in the regular garden beds. So if I watch this for myself and I think about it, I'll probably next year not even bother growing them in here. Just grow them out there and get what I can out of it, right? But we'll see. I'll probably make the same mistakes next year.